CS greetings, CS goers. I'm Extremes, and this handsome young devil is Beetle. How's it going?
It's a nice introduction. I like to be called handsome. Thanks. I'm
And
uh, I'm
young.
doing well. Yeah, doing well. A little bit hungover, so I apologize for the monotone, but I'll survive.
Do you speak any other way?
Yeah, I suppose that's a fair point.
I recall working with you at a Mega Ace event where I shouted at you and you shouted at me, and we were live on air. We were like having a go at each other right as we were about to go live because the poor observer was getting like super flustered.
Yep, I do recall that.
Yeah, well, I mean that leads us to the introduction or what this is about. I mean, just for the sake of viewers, guys, you often see me do interview videos where I look back at somebody's career, and I hope to do that at some point with Richard, Mr. Beetle here. But what we actually can have a talk about is production in SA. And he's kind of one of the best people to talk about that because he is one of the guys who've done production on most of the top events. So it should be really interesting. And he's going to drop some opinions, yeah, and hopefully I don't get fired as a result of said strong opinions. So, fingers crossed. Don't wreck
Yeah.
me, Richard, please.
No, I'll try my best. I'll try my best.
Well, it's your opinion. So any opinions expressed by Richard, please, they're not mine.
Yeah, I'll take full responsibility for anything.
Whoa, okay, cool. So, just give us a little bit of a history of yourself, Mr. Beetle. What have you been up to? What is your thing in South African esports?
Well, I mean, this is kind of where I like my first stepping point off into what's wrong with production actually should come from. But I'll sort of give you the rundown of where I came from. So, I mean, Nathaniel Burning Red Slubber is the production or technical manager for ESL. What's his official title there?
I don't know. I haven't seen an email signature, so for all I know, it could all be an elaborate ruse.
Well, I mean, we've been friends for a long, long time, and I started helping him with Nav TV, which came from a clan which him and I used to be in, or in fact started, called Nav Gaming, and I started helping them with their server admining and sort of like their their IT infrastructure stuff in about 2013, and it sort of grew into a point where I was helping them at events with production. And yeah, that's really how I got involved, I guess, is because I've known Nate for a long time, and he wanted some help and he knew I could assist with the server stuff. So, and I did such a good job at that I mean, why wouldn't he use me for other things?
Yeah, well, my first memory of you is meeting you at DGC 2015, where I simultaneously was playing in like DGC, and I helped you guys out with a like a design for your audio.
Yeah, and you
system.
had a booth upstairs. If
Oh
I remember.
yes.
Yeah,
I did that too. So yes, worst weekend of my life and best weekend of my life. But do you remember when I saw you like late on Saturday night? It was probably like 11 o'clock on Saturday night, and I was wrecked and you were wrecked, and I saw
Yep.
you, and I thought you were going to tell me that everything was going like completely tits up. It was all going to be broken, and I'd have to come and help you or something. And you said everything was working perfectly, and I was so relieved. I hugged you. Do you remember that?
I do. It was one of those like moments where you don't expect everything to work perfectly. So when it does, you're so surprised that it's a strange sense of relief and elation all in one go.
Yeah,
especially
it was
because you're that
amazing.
tired. So yeah.
It was amazing. It was like the best thing anybody's ever told me. I'm like, holy shit, please don't tell me everything is broken and I have to come fix it.
No, that setup worked. But I mean, it was simple, so it worked. Apart some loop back cables and whatnot, but it worked.
Compliments to the designer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where we met, I think, at DGC 2015, and
Yeah.
since then, before we go into the production thing, I'd also just like to give you a little bit of a personal shout out because you used to be a much bigger human and you're a much smaller human right now. You just
physically smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you've lost a whole person. It's amazing. So props to you. I mean the discipline is incredible, and like everybody that knows you, I mean I know a bunch of the ex-Nav TV guys and the current guys, and everybody's really proud of you. You recently did the Fish River Canyon hike as well, 87 Ks in 5 days.
Very long walk. Yeah, I do recommend it though if anybody's interested in hiking. It's not that hard, but it's just a lot of kilometers. So if you're interested in hiking, or if you want to start, it's actually not such a bad one to start with. Overnighting anyway, lots of fun.
Jeez, the rest of us think you're nuts, but you did it, so we're proud of you.
I still think I'm a bit nuts.
And you hung over too, so was that like a week and a half later celebratory drink,
friend's birthday. The celebratory drinks happened because we got back to the resort at the end of the trail at like 9 in the morning, and the drinking started then and ended like past midnight that night. So
Oh wow,
that was a long day of drinking. But
wreckage.
all of the calories that we lost on the hike were immediately put back on.
I can imagine so. So maybe something we need to define for people is what actually is the production side of esports, because I think maybe some guys will be sort of. What I notice is that people sort of confuse, camera work with audio, with direction, with overlays, and they kind of lump it all as production. And I kind of think it is to a degree, but it's multiple things that in production encompasses. Can you tell us a bit about what it actually is?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest part of production in my usual role is sort of like a top-down view of the whole event from production. So like, you're responsible for designing the what equipment you need, what length the cables have got to be, everything down to like the smallest minute details, and making sure there's enough staff, making sure you have enough cameras and they're in the right positions, and all the sort of software side of things are running properly. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be at what times and that sort of stuff. So I mean, it depends on how many people are at the event, but it can be as much as like directing people around and telling them when to go for lunch and when to come back, and like, so it very much depends on the event. The bigger events, obviously, you have a more sort of single role than. But I mean, with the NAV TV stuff, especially back in like 2014, 2015, it was always you just do whatever you had to do. Like, you fill in roles that are missing, and like, so I mean, so production for me is very multifaceted, and it's been, I mean, every event I've learned stuff, because I'm not a production person, I'm not an audio person, I'm not a video person. So like, I mean, I'm a purchaser, I do procurement for a living, so like it's very different to my my career. But effectively what it is directing what you see on the screen. So everything that you see coming into your YouTube or Twitch stream or whatever, who's on the screen, what game is being shown, what elements of the game is being shown, all the audio stuff. It's making sure all of that stuff works and making sure everybody around you is doing what they're supposed to do. And that's, I mean, I've taken on a role of a director more than a hands-on video person or audio person or observer or video switcher.
But that's where you've also been, in the smaller events. You've had to actually literally control those elements yourself.
All of it, yeah. Like, it's normally like a team of 6 people. You doing it yourself, because there's either no budget for like 6 people, or we haven't even come across those 6 people to be able to do it.
Yeah, very much so. It's basically, from what you're saying, it's mostly being a director, but you're also being the producer, you're also being the technical director and manager, and the floor manager as well, to kind of direct people around. So it's a lot of roles. And I guess in esports, because generally we don't have the amount of personnel that proper TV has, it's really a very demanding thing. I mean, I've been to a few events, and I always look at you guys and go like, well, I don't know how you do this, because it's just keeping hold of all these threads at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, to put it into perspective, the DGC, the last one that we did was 2015 on, when I first met you, and that one literally was, I think, 5 production people, and the 5 of us ran 7 streams, I think, for that weekend. So I mean, there was you were running more than 1 stream at a time, and like, it's gotten much better since then, like staff wise, definitely. But we come from chaos, so anything now is much easier.
Yeah, well, I mean, to put it in perspective for people, I mean, I don't know how much I'm supposed to say or not say, but with ESL Africa, it's literally it's a TV studio with the full personnel complement. So I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many people it is. It's probably like over 20 people. I mean, there's people on the floor, there's like 5 guys, there's camera guys, there's like multiple audio people, there's multiple like guys up in the control room, there's a dedicated graphics guy for the screen overlay. So it's very, 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 very different to
but I mean
that's sports event.
That's what's happening, is that we're seeing that shift to professional. Like in the past, there would be some guy's girlfriend would come and do the makeup, and like a guy that who knows how to move a mouse will come and be the observer, and like, so and now everything that we're doing, and like all of the people that are being employed to do the stuff are professionals. Like at the last Mega 8 event as well, it was a full studio setup. The people that were there was a sound engineer, there were video people, there were people that do that sort of thing for a living every day. So everything is just so much smoother and so much better. And I mean, it's It's definitely not where it needs to be still, but the shift from finding people who are willing to do it for little to no money because there isn't any yet, or there wasn't any, is definitely it's happening quick as well. It happened like overnight. We started just using professionals and using studios.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the first event I recall kind of having that sort of feel, I guess, was Masters 2016. But I mean, the event didn't go so well,
Yeah.
and there were multiple issues with it. But they did actually bring in a production company. I just think there the disconnect between what that production company is used to doing in broadcasting was like really big. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
making TV ads and doing a live broadcast are two very different things.
I wasn't involved, but I was there, and I spent a lot of time sort of hanging around, and yeah, it was they knew what they were doing production wise, and it was all very slick and well done, and like, but you could see that there was no esports person involved in the actual direction, because like the guy, they had a script writer, right? They were like handing out scripts, and I'm like,
What?
why? What is
For a
this?
live
Like,
event?
this isn't how this is like not how broadcasts work. You can't script a broadcast. Like, so I mean, that's an important distinction, is that even though we're going professional, it's still important to have esports people involved. And I think for a good example is the Mega 8 event that we did, that winter cup, or no, when was summer, autumn?
Autumn Cup, the CS:GO
Autumn
thing.
Cup. Yeah, that one. And I didn't do the winter one because I was in the desert, but that one had a lot of professionals, and I was there to sort of inject the esports knowledge into people who don't know what esports is, and the people around me were really humble. They were like, "Oh, really? Like, let's learn, let's do it." And everybody was super excited to be doing an esports broadcast, but it was the first one they'd done, and they were like, and your opinion is taken really like to heart and valued, and that's really cool. That even though they're professionals and they broadcast day in day out. I mean, these were people that do like a lot of SABC productions and stuff, and they were like, and we were like a 400 viewer esports tournament, and they're still like just as excited and just as like. So it's nice to see that, like, the professionals are also eager to get involved in this sort of stuff. But it's important for us to, as tournament organizers and for production people, to make sure that we still inject the esports knowledge into that production, and that company that did that, that DGC, didn't have it. And I mean, I don't want to speak out of line, but it did kind of felt like they were very hesitant to take input, from the people around them that could have given valuable input. But I wasn't directly involved, like I said, so I might be talking out of turn.
Well, and from my side, I mean, I probably could have given them some input too, but I was in the commentary booth, so really I had no possibility for it anyway. So yeah, I mean, there was definitely frustrations about that, but like if I compare it to say EveTech Champions League, which I don't think you were involved with. But I mean, there it was like one dude, Nick, kind of doing audio, doing video, directing, kind of like doing everything. And I just said to him, dude, you're nuts. You're going to like fall over dead by day 3. And he didn't fall over dead, which is pretty good because Nick's a good guy. But, we wouldn't want that to happen. He's got family and friends and people who love him. But I mean, I look at that, and actually kind of what was weird about it is ECL's on-camera experience was probably better for viewers than Masters, which had a whole crew behind it, and I think that was just because it was esports people kind of making sure that what was actually important was going on camera. So
I mean, that and it was simple. So I mean, nobody tried to overcomplicate things like a production company would. We're not at the point where we're not professional broadcasters. We're not trained broadcasters. We love esports, so we decided to get involved, kind of thing. And trying to make things too complicated and too professional almost actually causes more errors and more issues than if you just keep things simple. And that was always like, it's something that I've preached every time I've done production for Nav TV. I've always said, like, anytime somebody brings complicated ideas to the table, I'm like, oh, that'd be really good, but do we actually know how to do this, or is it just going to be like something that's going to make a whole lot of problems for us? And I mean, it's the shift from amateur to pro. Once we start getting more pro people involved, that sort of stuff will become easy for us, so we can start to get more complicated. But back then, in those sort of things, and it's you get the reviewers getting everything they want, but they're also not getting a bad experience because we're not trying to do things we don't know how. And it's nice to know that sort of thing happened, or that philosophy kept going, like inside Nav TV.
Yeah, definitely important not to overcomplicate things, because also I think a viewer can very easily see if what's going on camera. I mean, if they got half a brain, that there's more ambition than expertise
Yeah,
kind of involved. Like this all seems like a great idea, but it doesn't look very good. So,
yeah.
um,
Rather focus on bringing people the games rather than like a flashy, overproduced show that's actually not necessary. Nice, but not necessary.
yeah, I think it can fall flat if it doesn't come off well. But something you mentioned a little earlier on, which I think is interesting, is that you were mentioning about how the guys at Mega 8 at Urban Brew Studios were taking the direction of the esports people and taking what they're saying. And I think part of the professionalism thing is, I mean, we come from esports where everybody is a bit of a drama queen, and everybody wants to be in charge. And that's for me it's really weird, because obviously I come from a more professional audio background as well,
Mm.
so it's been a little bit of an adjustment for me how many princesses there are. But at the same time, I think part of professionalism is taking the direction of the people that know, and that kind of for me also is what separates the proper production people from the TV and film world from guys who've been doing it in esports, where it's not about me personally looking good, it's about making sure that the broadcast is as good as it can possibly be.
Yeah, agreed, definitely. Um, sorry,
Yeah,
phone rang.
well, I mean, you are hungover, so like reactions are going to be a little bit slow, yeah, right?
Took me a second to figure out what the phone was first. Yeah.
This sort of squarish rectangular object. It's
Why
moving.
is it making a high pitched noise? Yeah.
So maybe something to touch on here is uh, the sort of production setup that's in a studio that's purpose built and is always there, versus a kind of rough and ready. We'll bring what we need, and we'll take it out again
Mm.
after the event. I mean, what are the pros and cons there?
The cons of the setup are very much that you're there 2 days before the event starts, and you have to test and retest and make sure everything's working over and over and over again. So like by the time the event starts, you're already tired. So that's a massive problem and a massive thing that's always bothered us with the setup. However, it can be more bespoke. You can customize it to exactly what you want, what you need, and you can use different venues, and like for live events. And we did those ones in the malls, and they were really really fun to do because there's a lot of buzz, and even people that aren't even interested in esports are adding to that buzz. But by the time the event starts, you're already tired, and that's something that the always ready studio, the pre-setup stuff like Metal States building their forge, and you've got your Quasi setup. That's nice because you can walk in, and sure there's pre-tests, but most of the time you walk in, sit down, and do your broadcast. So you've still got all the energy for your broadcast, and you haven't had to be there for 2 days testing and retesting and setting things up and carrying things in and out. And like, so I mean the always ready studio can also be outfitted with better stuff because you don't have security risks and you don't have to store the stuff while you're not using it, which Nate's lounge is always full of sound equipment and cameras. And
Yeah, I think it's all gone now, but yeah, I know what you mean. I remember visiting the dude and like falling over like PCs
yeah.
and like broadcast headsets and all these.
The guest's bed is actually like the crates from the cameras.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like the SL studio, for instance, they got so many redundancies. Like, and that's something I remember preaching to Nate like 2 years ago. Like, dude, you need redundancy. You need, if like something goes down, that like one thing that you have running everything, when that dies, then your broadcast is over. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how many esports broadcasts in South Africa, including some of the newer guys, run on systems that have no redundancy whatsoever. So it's quite a risk. But
Yeah.
in ESL's case, on the very first night, I'm not talking the preseason, but the actual proper like season start. I think 5 minutes after going live, there was a power surge in the area, and then the power went off. So there was first a surge, then it went off, then it came back on again and was low voltage, and then it surged again, and then it went back to normal. So literally, what happened is the stream dropped. The lights went out, the backups immediately came on, then they went off again because the power came back on again, and then then there was a brownout, and things literally exploded like sparks and stuff.
Yeah.
And within like 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes, they'd like rewired and put in another unit, and off we go, and back on stream on the generator, no issues. And I was just looking
Yeah.
at that, going, "Wow! If we'd been doing a regular esports broadcast, our whole
So,
season would be over
yep.
at this point."
Sorry, friends. Yeah, we'll do
But
this event another time.
yeah, well,
Yeah, because
unfortunately, all the budget would be gone in the fried
yeah.
equipment. So then the event is like, it's over. It's not happening again. So I've never seen a scenario that bad happen, and it happened in the first 5 minutes of the broadcast. And I don't think anybody watching noticed that something like that actually happened. Like
Yeah.
200,000 rands worth of equipment exploded, but
Yeah.
and they made it work within 2 minutes. It was incredible.
'Cause I mean, yeah, I mean, we've had equipment die on sites as well. Like there was a PreSonus audio mixer, a 4-channel mixer that one of the ports died on, and like that's during the stream, and like we don't at that stage we weren't like, I don't know, we hadn't done enough events to sort of have redundant equipment and that sort of stuff. So you've got to like change your whole setup. Then you've got to go, well, we can't have 4 people on the panel. We can only have 3 now, and like you got to shrink your whole production because a piece of equipment's gone faulty. So I mean, that's it all comes back to more and more professional, and it's so quick. It happens so quick. Like between your Rage last year and now, like those put it together yourself out of string, tic tac, and potatoes. Like it's just stopped. They just don't exist anymore, and
Are
it's
the
really
potatoes the people, or the components?
well, we'll leave that up to interpretation.
Wow, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the ESL thing was just amazing. It was like the perfect storm of the worst possible sequence of events that could happen that would blow equipment up. Because there were UPSs, and the UPSs exploded, and then
Yeah.
it's anyway. I've never seen such a scenario, and it still worked. My mind is still blown 3 weeks later. I'm like, how is this? How is this possible? But these are TV people; they know what they're
Yeah,
doing.
well, every day of their lives. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've heard a lot in about recent events that have been on. Not to point out, but unless you want to point people out, but there's a lot of times where phrases like raising the bar of production levels in South Africa have been used, and setting a new standard. Words like that have been used a fair bit. Do you think those sorts of words being used are justified at events?
Well, I mean, I think it's important before we start, being cuck, is that we have to recognize where we've come from in quite a short space of time. We're like, when we were talking about those
Definitely.
2015 broadcasts, we were 5 people running 7 streams. We had 2 headsets, and if anything were to go wrong, like the one somebody's Xbox was stolen, and like we couldn't stream that game because like, oh, Xbox is gone. That title's not going to be streamed this weekend. Yeah. So we've come a long way, and it's important to note that. And like all of us are learning, and all of us are getting better at what we're doing. So I think raising the bar is true. We have raised the bar of the production that we've been used to, but at the same time, we haven't raised it nearly enough, because there's still those day one problems. There's still audio problems as soon as the broadcast goes live. Somebody starts speaking, and like all you can see is a mouth moving because I have forgotten to like put the mic up, or like, those sort of things. They just can't happen. Like they just can't. And until we can get to a point where we can start a broadcast and that broadcast is 100% flawless from start to finish every time, we certainly can't say that this is the new standard of production and this is what everybody should be striving for. Like, I saw it a lot. I mean, probably shouldn't mention specific events, but it's not their fault that they were used. But like for the Metal State one, there was so much rhetoric on Twitter. Like it was an echo chamber. People were just going, oh wow, this is a new production. Your event production was awesome. It was awesome. They had the screens in front of the players, so they could have their pictures and all that stuff on it. Their sound was mostly perfect the whole weekend, but they did have problems. And until those problems are eliminated, it can't be the gold standard and the new standard and everything. It's not words we should be using. We should be going, wow, you guys really did an amazing job, but we're not there yet. We haven't reached Supersport levels. And sure, we don't have a broadcast truck with 10 million rand worth of equipment in it. It'll probably double that, but we definitely aren't near the gold standard yet. Definitely not.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, working on the ESL thing, like I got to say, I don't think we've had a broadcast yet that hasn't had some kind of issue on it. So, I mean, that's no indictment on the team. They are professionals, and that's what we've never had before. But still, there's the occasional issue, and it shouldn't happen. So, I mean, I know in saying this, there are people who are going to, if they look at it, going like, well, there's one or two reactions here. It's either, well, I mean, I'm looking at it as an audio professional myself and saying, hey, there should be no issues, and they're going to be the first people to admit it. There should be no issues.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're not on a Supersport budget. So it's hugely expensive, but it's not anywhere near Supersport money. I mean, this is costing hundreds of thousands of rands every week, but it's not Supersport money. Supersport money is, well, let's say times that by 10, and you're probably in the ballpark for what it costs them to do what they do.
But I mean, but that is the gold standard, and that's the point. Like it's. And I think it's also systemic of like we are a close knit community. Like all the esports people that are in production, whether you're a caster or a production person or a sound person or even a player, we are like in this almost closed off walled garden where we like, we talk to each other and we sort of validate each other, and we don't really take that much criticism on board, because if people criticize us, we're like, nah, they're just trolls. Like,
oh, that would be me. So
yeah. So, I mean, it is an echo chamber rhetoric where we just don't allow ourselves to, think that we aren't good enough, and we need to. And that's the only way you're ever going to improve, if you accept that you're not good enough. And I know that, and I'm saying that knowing that a lot of us who do it, and like the Medal State people and your guys at ESL, at Quasi, know that they have work to do, but they also can like, rest easy knowing that they have come a long way. We all have, since some of those early broadcasts.
What, the karaoke mics? I've heard stories.
That's right. Yeah, those things, 300 rand each, right?
Wow.
For the mic and the preamp. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So just standing there with a karaoke mic, and you're not.
Oh, hey! We had desk stands. We didn't have to hold.
You didn't have to hold them, but you also didn't have to sing Summer of '69. So
no, we didn't. And there was those mics were really bad. Like every time the cable moved, it crackled, and
Oh wow! So definitely come a long way in a short period of time. Like I'm interested in what you're saying about the echo chamber sort of thing, of like where people validate each other. Like that was the best. I've never been one to like take compliments on board for at face value. I'll be always like, somebody tells me, hey, like, great job, I'll go like, okay, cool, but let me really go and look at that and see what I did. I think you got to have a pretty healthy degree of introspection, of
humility as well.
Oh no, I got none of that, dude. I'm the best, but but no, it's you do have to be able to look at yourself and go like, was that as good as it could be, or wasn't it? And I think there's a propensity to be either overly critical or overly positive about things. Like there doesn't seem to be a very good middle ground in South African esports, because as you say, it's a close knit community. So if I look at it like it's either it's absolute shit. If you go like, for instance, after Medal Stage, you go look at the South African CS:GO Facebook page. There's posts with people like taking a shit on the casting, for instance, or on whatever aspects of competition structure. I think was one of them. I'm trying to remember. And then there's also people saying, oh, it was like the best event ever, and it's like a whole long thread about how it's the best event ever, and there's a whole long thread about how it's the shittest event ever. But there's very seldom like a proper middle ground, like the reasonable sort of approach where you go like, hey, there were issues. That event particularly, I think for me, the main issue was the fact that the pre-recorded like transitions were like massively louder than the
super
broadcast.
Loud, yeah.
And it stayed that way for the whole thing. It got better, but it never got to the point of being acceptable. So, there was like, okay, well, we're pushing the boundaries of production, but by day 3, that is still an issue, and like any headphones that existed in South Africa that tuned into the broadcast were all blown up.
Yeah, that's elementary, right? Like getting your levels of your pre-recorded and your mic audios. That's elementary stuff. That's something that just genuinely shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't even be a consideration to something. I mean, it's that's why it's important. Yeah, you would, but I mean that's why it's important. I mean they did set a new benchmark. That's a fair statement.
Absolutely, that was better than anything before, for sure.
Yeah, but they definitely didn't set a gold standard. That's I mean, I tweeted at them and said like, wow, like that was really great, good production, excellent. Like we've got something to strive towards now, like as other content producers. But I mean, there's so much work to be done, and like they did a great job. Don't take nothing away from them, but don't just go, okay, well now we can sit back and relax. And I don't think they are. I don't think they are either. I mean, from speaking to Nate, I know him and Barry talk a fair bit. So, I mean, it seems like they're obviously aware that
some things could be better, but the fact is always things can be better. It's just, I think if you take Metal State as an isolated case, if you were to try to pass it off as an international production to like say sell that content to ESL or somebody like that, they would say they wouldn't take it because of a number of little issues, like for instance the panel being facing to a window, so light coming in wrecking the camera lens and everybody looks like they're in heaven sort of vibe, which is an issue. I think that was probably due to space constraints at the event, if I had to look at it. So I mean, give them a pass there again. But the positives about the event was the scale of the events. I mean, as you said, they had a big stage, they had the screens in front of the players with the players' faces, which I think is really important. Like, it's a huge lacking issue in South African esports that people don't know what players look like. How can you follow a player just because you like his name? I mean, you've never seen him, so it's
that's it, right? Like every time we've got cameras, they're always on the broadcasters, on the casters, and on the stage
exactly.
hosts.
I mean, we're important.
But I mean,
lives matter, right?
They should be on the players.
I agree, absolutely.
So it's nice that sort of stuff is getting taken into account, and that's we're telling stories about those players, and we're sort of like the narrators. And when do you see a narrator in a movie or a series? You don't.
Not as often as what we have, which I think is an issue. So I would agree with you there. Like other positives from the event, I think also is that Rob Forbes was pretty awesome as the host.
He was a very good host.
He did a really good job, and like just in general, like getting players to talk. I know how hard it is to get players to talk because I do these videos, and it was refreshing that he was able to actually get them to come out of their shell and speak, and without them being intimidated, which I think is a really like a difficult balance. But overall, the observing was probably the best that we've seen in SA so far. I thought Mega 8s was pretty good as well, but I'm a bit biased to old Linus. But in general, it was great. So I mean, let me also just say that, because I mean, basically what will happen now is people will look at this and go, look at Axe, he's taking a shit on Metal State. And
no, I mean,
that's not the case. We're just looking at it. But that's again, like, people take the extreme view. You say something bad, you're a dick. If you say something too nice, then you're just
too soft.
You're sucking dick, or whatever viewpoint people want to take. So it's just there's too many extremes, but not enough reasonable opinion, because I mean I don't think it should be a case of like whose side you're on. It should be on the side of, is it good or is it bad, and if it's somewhere in the middle, then let's go with that.
And I mean, we're using Metal State, we keep saying Metal State, but I mean, it could literally be insert tournament name here, and like a lot of the points will probably be around about the same. So,
let's take a hot steamy dump on Mega 8. Won't that be fun?
Yeah, we could. I mean, there's definitely things we could criticize.
Well, what about the black curtain behind the players moving, flapping in the breeze?
Or just the black curtain in general, like that void behind, like, there's just no interesting stuff in the background. Like, I know. More. Yeah, and it was even worse at the second one. Like, it was behind the casters, and you're just like these people in front of this void behind them. Like, make stuff more interesting. Like with the TV too high, and it was shining off the lights. There were lots of things, but like, it's teething issues. It's some things that get sorted out over time. And Telkom had their I don't even know what they call it now. Their Masters
VS Gaming Masters Dota 2 thing.
That one, yeah, and that was good as well. But you had Hellbird with a piece of paper, and then it evolved into a clipboard, yes. And then it evolved to a tablet on a clipboard. So
I don't understand.
So I mean, there's all sorts of. As a viewer, you notice those things immediately, but while you're actually at the event, and if you're in that production, frame of mind, you might not, because you've got your yes men around you, who are just doing what you say. So it's almost like you need a quality control team to sit there and like go, oh no, you should change this, oh you should change this, and like it's something we might actually consider doing in the future, is having somebody watching the out broadcast and giving direct feedback all the time.
I can't be on camera and be the dickhead who like sits on the broadcast at the same time, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
actually, that is what I do right now. I am that arsehole where like I'm at Masters and Rob sees me coming, he's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And like we're at at ESL and they see me coming, like, oh shit, he's gonna do it.
Yeah, that's but I like that. I like the arsehole, because that's maybe not the right wording to use there, but
okay. So Beetle likes arseholes. 2K17.
But I like that. I like negative feedback. I really do. I genuinely like negative feedback, because that's where you get information. And like, I don't mean, oh, look at him, he looks like shit, or he shouldn't be on camera, he's got a face for radio, and all that sort of like the trolley stuff. I'm talking about like, your actual good, valuable feedback. And it's difficult to find it in chat trolls, but you should keep an eye for it. Definitely.
Yeah, it's actually it's not often constructive, but when you can identify with what's being said, again, if you have a healthy sort of dose of introspection, like, I mean, there's a comment I think on Monday's ESL broadcast, or was it Tuesdays, that Extremes looks like the kind of guy who captures girls' farts in a jar and then sniffs them, and I was like, okay, I can't really see myself in that, but
Yeah,
I guess I look creepy, so maybe I need to lose the hat or something.
Or stop carrying around jars, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, there could be that jar that I'm sort of like holding
Yeah.
under my. But I mean, that's the kind of thing where you look at it and go, okay, well, I'm not going to take anything positive out of this, but I can't find anything there. It doesn't have to be positive, but when somebody says something like, hey, the caster's faces look a little bit dark, then you look at it and go, okay, wait, hang on. So that means either the lighting isn't direct enough or we don't have enough of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, why does it look like they're sitting in the dark? Something like that. And the person thinks they're trolling, but actually that's helpful information.
And when you get that feedback from the chat, when you're in a live production and somebody says, oh, this video is stuttering, or I can't hear this person, and like immediately action it. Don't wait for the next pause or wait for the panel to end and then like stop it, play an advert and fix it and carry on. Because a lot of times I see an error, and in the chat, like the production people are going, we're aware of it, we'll fix it as soon as this panel's done, or like, oh, we're getting drop frames, just restart it. Just rather take the 20 seconds to restart the frame or to fix the problem than like to carry on, because people will tune out. Like, our broadcast audience is fickle, like they really are. If there's something wrong, they'll just stop watching. They've got international things they can watch. So you've got to give them a top quality production. You've got to fix issues when they arise, as soon as they arise, and not wait for breaks and
Yeah, very much so. I totally agree. I mean, something we just need to reiterate here again is, like, in a very short space of time, like 3 years basically, South African production's gone from utter shite, let's be honest, to being pretty close to international standard. I don't believe where people say that it is international standard, because it's not, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, and I mean, and stop shitting on casters as well. People that are watching.
I like this one.
Like, positive feedback is so much more motivating than negative feedback. And we like negative feedback. We do, because it gives us things to change. But like, our casters aren't bad, and our production people aren't bad. We have a lot of talent and a lot of like really, really motivated people. And if all you're doing is coming and shitting on them in the chat, they're just going to stop doing it. I've seen a lot of people stop. And like over the years, many people that I've worked with in the past, really good people, have like gone, oh, I'm just not into this anymore. I just don't like the abuse. And, just stop. Just don't do it. It's not worth it. Because all you're doing is just, you're going to lose you're going to lose the broadcast, or you're going to end up with people who are second tier because the first tier people have had enough.
Yeah, well, if you kick somebody for long enough, something's got to give. It's either going to be their ribs or it's going to be your foot, right? And usually it's their ribs. So. Yep. Unfortunately, yeah, I've seen that happen. Guys that have sort of pulled out, fallen by the wayside, and it's unfortunate that it happens, but it does, and it's kind of a reality of this as well. I think you have to have a fairly thick skin, and sometimes you develop it over time. Some guys come in really real delicate flowers, and esports toughens them up.
And some people that have been in it for a long time are still delicate flowers, and like
that's true,
almost blinker themselves to the negative stuff, because there's so much troll within the negative that, like, if you believe that narrative, it'll destroy your soul.
Yeah, there is that possibility. I mean, in my case, I don't have one, so I'm quite okay. So, I mean, you mentioned something a little bit earlier about that until we could produce a broadcast like Supersport can, we haven't arrived. We're nowhere near perfect. I mean, do you stand by that statement? Is that...
Yeah. Supersport is the gold standard, right? Supersport is a flawless production every time. You never see problems, never. They have equipment that's worth millions, but they just don't have problems. You never have mics that don't turn on when they're supposed to, or camera feeds that don't come through when they're supposed to, or production or talent that's upstairs in the lunchroom when the
Yes.
when the panel's supposed to be live, and like, you know, they are absolutely professional in every way, and they always are, and they're always on point, and their people are always smiling and happy and like ready to go. And until we get to that point, we can't call ourselves perfect. We can't call ourselves perfect. We can't say we've got a good standard of production. We've got a good standard of production. We don't have a great standard of production.
Yeah, well, I mean, my experiences of Supersport with the company that I work for, I mean, I don't deal with them directly, but the guy I share an office with actually is kind of the guy who looks after Supersport. And if I see how they do things and how they deal with things, I mean, they're just to give you an idea, like you know those little headsets that you wear that are sort of like color coded to sort of blend with your skin, tiny little headset, little capsule. I mean,
Countryman's.
yeah, a popular one that everybody uses is the Countryman. Supersport don't do that. They use something called DPA, which is about 7 or 8 times the price. D stands for Denmark because it's made in Denmark, so it's like high quality. And they were talking, you know, that's what they're going to spend because they're going to make sure that they have the best. So when the referee's running around with Super Rugby, he's running around in the rain, sweating, all of that, and the mic's going to keep working. You know, it's just that's the level that they're at. They're not going to. I mean, you immediately think Countryman. Everybody thinks Countryman who knows audio, but they're like, okay, no, we don't want that shit. We want the best.
Yeah, that's it. And we're going to get to a point where we can start buying that stuff in 5 years' time, maybe. But until then, we got to do what we can with what we have. And I still feel like we're not at the best we can be with what we have still, even though it might not be DPA or it was DPA, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is also, I mean, anybody who's had like a home recording studio, you've done something like that, you always know, you learn your equipment and you learn how to get around its little foibles and how to get the best possible product out of it from use. I think possibly the use is a little bit too sporadic sometimes in esports because we have often such long periods between events. I think that's changing because there's so many more events, but yeah, from repeated use, I mean, from this microphone, if I were to keep using this microphone and do multiple events with it and whatever, then I start to realize, okay, this is where it really shines for this sort of use, and for, you know, this kind of voice, it's not going to be the right thing, you know, stuff like that. So you get to learn your equipment and you get to make the best of it. So I totally get where you're coming from there. You know, I mean, you can use a setup like we use the TGC 2015 even now and get a really good quality product out of it, but it's about using it optimally.
Yeah, I mean, and that also, like, sort of, it's a jumping off point for another problem in esports production, is that we stick to the old guard, right? We stick to those people who know the niggles of all this equipment, and we keep getting them back because they know how to kind of
wrangle it,
modify, how to make it work, you know, how to duct tape it together to make it carry on, and it's not. That's where the pro shift is awesome, because I'm losing work to the pro stuff effectively, if you put it like that. But I'm actually kind of glad, because it means that our production is getting better. You know, like,
and you might live longer.
Yeah. Well, like, cholesterol's down. Like it is. It's a case of where the old guard, who have just always been there because they were kind of there, are starting to be replaced by professional people. And that's good and bad. I mean, well, not replaced, but used for different things, or their roles are shifting. And that's awesome. That's really good that we're taking those, you know, amateur people who are friends with somebody who started a tournament, or that knows a guy from something that is willing to do it for half the professional price. That, you know, those kind of things are ending.
It's got to stop.
That's great. It's great that it's ending, and it still happens. There's still like insider trading, or however you want to, you know, call it, but it's getting less. Yeah, well, I guess nepotism in a way. Yeah, it's not, but it's nice that we're getting more and more professional people on board. Really nice.
Yeah, so something else we can also have a chat about is equipment sponsors, these nice people who come and give us things and say, hey, use it. Hey, I thought I did that once, but
there's you know, traditionally us in esports have always gone to Gigabyte or MSI, or, you know, and asked for keyboards and mice and PCs and stuff. But why don't we go and ask audio people and video people and stuff to get involved in the sponsorship of stuff? Sure, they don't see their stuff. You don't see a camera because, you know, the camera's taking the video, but, you know, those people are available to you, and they have marketing budgets all the same. And you know, it's interesting to see where we put our effort in finding sponsors to a laptop to stick on a desk in production that or on the panel that or 9 times out of 10 is not even on. It's just like there, and why is it even there? Like, or PCs to run production of, or at least the observers in CS:GO, and we don't approach the right people for equipment sponsorship, and I'm sure that's getting better now. I mean, I know all event venue sponsors and food sponsors and all sorts of stuff that we haven't.
Some of the non-endemic sponsors, the guys who are
and
going to be outside of being a traditional gaming sponsor.
yeah, why not have exactly, that's it. Is that we don't have Spur sponsoring a broadcast, but why? Okay, apart from the fact that we're all supposed to be boycotting them or something, but there's no reason why we can't go and get Ford to sponsor a broadcast, and it's about time we started doing that, I think.
I guess that's where real kudos to Metal State for getting Samsung involved, because that's, I mean, the gaming you can do on the phone is very far different to CS:GO. So I mean, that's really it's a non-endemic sponsor. So real props to them for getting a huge lifestyle brand, and probably I think one of the very biggest companies in the world actually involved.
Well, I mean, I assume they're going to be having Clash of Clans tournaments or something coming up. They've got to link it back to Samsung somehow.
That'd be interesting. Maybe that's what the new casting competition is for. You think you're going to do Dota or CS:GO, but you're doing Clash Clans, motherfucker.
That'd be quite interesting to cast.
But what happens when you hit the paywall? Then it's like, okay, wait.
Yeah, true.
Just hang on. I've just put my credit card through.
He's doing a transaction. It's a microtransaction.
Insane transactions to quote the meme, So, talking about microphones, I mean, the headset aspect is something that's always quite funny with sponsorships. Like, hey, let's take a sponsorship from Gigabyte or somebody, and he has a gaming headset, please cast with that.
Yeah. It makes me so mad. Headsets on a panel just look so clunky, and it's international, right? They do it all over the place, and it's purely sponsor based. It has to be, because why else would you use a headset instead of a lapel mic? Lapel mics are nice and out the way. You can see the person's whole face. They look more open and more approachable. Where a headset kind of it's like a barrier, right? A visual barrier, and it's going to cost you what does a lapel mic cost? Even a wireless one's like $3,500. It's almost the same price as the headset. So I mean, why are we still using headsets versus lapel mics? Do we really have to have everything sponsored?
I think it's probably just going with international trends. Like, what is nice with, for instance, ESL is they've just transitioned the panel towards the Countryman. So the tiny little
those are great as well.
Because you can't really see them very much. And then the cost is obviously on the traditional broadcast headsets. I mean, the funny thing is, if you tune into NBA or NFL or something, the guys are always wearing the giant broadcast headsets, which also I agree, it drives me crazy. It's like, why is this dude being such a banana and wearing a headset and a room full of people?
I guess in a case of a live sports broadcast, or
there's a crowd
people
right there
down on the field, and there's a crowd, and you got to make sure that your noise gates and whatever are blocking that sort of stuff, and headsets, and also so they can hear. And I guess headsets are better suited. But if you're in a studio and it's a panel, there's no reason to have them with headsets apart from sponsorship. That's the only reason. There really isn't. A lapel mic or a Countryman, it just looks so much nicer.
Yeah, well, I mean, having been the company responsible for supplying headsets to the majority of these guys, I can tell you that they're not for free. So they really don't. They really just don't think about that. It's like, okay, well, we need broadcast headsets, so that's what we do. And
even in the DGC, I think, because when we started using the Audiotechnica ones, it was for DGC, right? And that was because there's a LAN going on, so it's loud. So you've got the same sort of vibe as the sports field. So that makes sense. But now we're in studios. Why are we still using them?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, the lapel thing, just to get a little bit technical here, I guess. The issue with lapels, with multiple people in close proximity with each other, those things do catch a fair bit of sort of ambience. So when a bunch of people are sitting together, you're going to see all those levels on the mics bouncing around when one guy's talking. So you'd have to be quite careful with it. Particularly also for phasing as well, because then
overhead boom mics, or something that's out of frame as well.
Yeah, that's also an option, but I reckon the Countryman solution's probably
Countryman does make the most sense.
Probably the best way. But yeah, I mean, to me, wearing a hat, bro, wearing a headset over that, that gets a little bit. That gets to me, man. It gets to me. It's like glasses under headsets.
Yes.
So, perfect storm for going at the end of the day, wanting to throw the headset on the ground and then jump on it. Because it's like, okay, die headset, you've caused me pain. Now meet your demise.
Anyway, yeah, just stop using it. If you're listening to production people, use something else. Unless the sponsors of the headsets are actually paying you a lot of money, stop using them. But it's an international trend. They still do it overseas.
Oh, yeah, very, very much so. I guess
maybe there's a reason. Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe it's because they just already own those things.
Yeah. Well, that's why we use them. Yeah.
So, talking about support staff and people that are actually on broadcasts, what do you think about those minions?
Well, that's like I was saying earlier. Those people are changing. Those people are changing to professionals instead of friends and people who like.
Somebody's
I know
girlfriend.
a guy. I know a guy who plays CS. We can get him to do the observer. Like those people are changing, and that's really great that they're changing to actual producers and actual production companies and cameramen that can use a camera, and it's not the first time they're switching it on and they've got to figure out how to use it in the day before, like the events, because we've done that a lot. Like but it's the events do lose a bit of their, like, in the past when you get invited to an esports event, it's like, hell yeah, this is going to be like a weekend party, a bit of work in between, and that's dropping a little bit with the more professional stuff. Like, you go into a studio, you do your job, and then you leave, and then the party starts. Whereas in the past, it's always been like, well, it's been a day-long party, and every now and again you got to sit on a panel for an hour, and like, that's the sad part about it being more professional. But it has to go that way. It has to go more professional. So it just means we're going to be up later, tired more.
Yeah. I think every sport, where physical sport, has gone through this from transition from amateurism to professionalism. It's just esports. It's happened at an absolutely madly accelerated rate.
Yeah,
because
it has to.
It absolutely has to. So talking about the graphics and video aspect of the broadcast, the stingers. If you could explain what that's all about.
There's at the beginning of every event that I've ever worked on, there's always like the very last thing to be done and to be concentrated on are like your logo, spinning logos, and your and stingers and graphic cut scenes between your panel, your games. And often it's like an hour before and you're still rendering something because you got to put in a player's name or change something, or somebody's dropped out and another team's taken over, and it causes so much stress like before the event. And one of the reason Mega 8 things, like, we had our videos rendering for use on the system we were using 15 minutes before the broadcast started. We were like desperately trying to get this video to work, and there's certain things that strangely don't get focus, and this is one of them. Like this, and it's actually kind of important to your story and to your brand, is having these graphics and video stingers to be as absolutely good as possible, and like put more emphasis on them, put more effort, and take more time and do it earlier and do it better. Get graphic people who are video people to do it, not graphic people who are still graphic people, or like somebody who works for your mom who's like kind of they've got a copy of Photoshop or something, like
the crack copy.
Yeah, get people who know what they're doing to do it. And it's like another shift that is happening, but it's happening slower than everything else. It's one of the areas where I see the shift, not because that stuff's expensive, right? People don't realize how much that stuff costs, how much graphic designers charge, and it's justified charge.
Yeah.
But it's something that people seem to not take a lot of, emphasis in the budget, or like, that's not that important. We'll just get like a template for After Effects and just shove our logo on it. It'll be fine. Like, people should put more effort into that, the graphics. And it has happened. Metal State's graphics were really good.
Yeah,
and
they were.
So it's getting better. Telcoms as well. They had replays right in their last thing. That's an elementary piece of equipment to do that, but it's expensive. But it should be at every event. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. And the game introductions that Telcom did were really nice, but the cuts to the panel were really sudden.
Startlingly so.
Yeah, they were startling. Like, they had such a nice like transition into the game, like with a little thing in the window, and then it would like suddenly get bigger, and then like Devin's face, like all of a sudden it was.
And then there's a clipboard as well. It's like, okay, I'm tilted now.
Yeah, immediate tilt. Yeah,
Immediate tilt. Well, I mean, props CSL. They've got a guy called Dustin, who you probably know.
yeah.
Actually spending time in the studio. He's there from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the day of the broadcast. I actually drop him off at home because he lives in the same area as me. So we talk about what he does, and I actually have some newfound respect for these
Yeah.
stinger people because
Yeah.
it's just like holy crap, the amount of pressure that he's under to deliver like a little bit of graphic that just says these players' names, because there's now like been a late, like 5 minutes before the broadcast, change in the lineup or something, and that requires going and changing all of the pre-made stuff. It's difficult stuff. People don't realize
Yeah,
it's
and it's awesome to hear that you actually have somebody on site, because that's what you need. You need somebody that's there during the broadcast that's able to change that stuff. And I mean, I've done it. I've made those video stingers from templates, and because we haven't had anybody to do it, or we haven't, when we quoted, we didn't think about doing that in the budget. So it's some of those things are just, it's weird how that is just one of the things that is never really taken too seriously, and it is actually really important.
And that also kind of ties into sort of statistics. I'm showing, kill death ratios and, match results, things like that on screen as well. I mean, again, taking the Dustin example, the guys are there. So this team wins, you can see kind of who's there. There's no stats yet, which I think is a major failing at the moment, but
Yeah.
I gather they're working on it. So, I mean, that is an aspect that ties into what you're saying.
Well, like with the VS Gaming tournament, they had Sargon there, right, doing the stats for Dota. They
And
had
he
the
is the
stats.
best. So.
They had the stats. The panel was using them, but they weren't showing them in game, and they weren't making those stats available to the viewers. And like some viewers, I really love stats. Like when Knoxville, our own export who does the stats for Dota overseas, those stats are awesome to see, like how many times this hero has been picked and banned, and like how many times he's bought specific items. And it's those stats are there, they're available. I mean, Dota itself keeps track of those stats, so they're easy to get, and there's platforms available for people to use to pass those replays, etc., and get the stats out. And we need to use them more. And I know that by itself is quite a big overhead in production to get those stats done. That's a video person, probably more than one video person there to do those things, or we need the equipment that can do it live without having to pre-render. And obviously that's cost implications, but it's also something that adds so much value to a broadcast, and something that we just don't do, and we should start looking towards doing it.
Absolutely agree. I mean, like I recall doing ESEA costs last year online, where I can alt tab and bring up to the viewer the stats page from ESEA, and it's like, wow, this is like magic. This is CS:GO broadcast with stats. What the hell is this? But I mean, that stuff adds so much value. I think the issue with CS is CS doesn't have a like a stats generation facility really. Like guys like HLTV use some very secret things to make their stats, for instance, and then unwilling to share it with other people, and that's kind of how people understand stats is HLTV. So that's an issue.
Well, we had Billowsoft at one of the tournaments, and after every game, Billowsoft, the system compiles like a stats page.
Yes.
So that's available. You can use that, but we don't. We don't talk about stats after the game, and I don't know why.
I agree. We absolutely should. To me, we want to know in CS, because the stats also. I mean, here's the issue really. I mean, it's probably another video unto itself. But CS, the stats often don't mean a lot. Usually they do, but there's a lot of instances where you look at it and go like, okay, that's not the game I watched.
Yeah.
It's just because very minor actions like, hey, this dude kept throwing a flash that blinded the other team and enabled his teammates to get the kills. That's not counted in any way. Or so this guy's got no kills. He's an absolute shitter. But as it turns out, without him, those guys who are racking up the kills wouldn't be able to do it. So it's very hard to quantify. But just something as simple as a kill death ratio. It's sometimes, to me, it's like, hey, Mr. Observer, can you push tabs so we can we can just see what's the viewers can see what's going on in this game. Like, it feels like it's a little silly that's required to tell people kind of who's doing well, who's not doing well. There should be something after the game.
In Dota games, when you're watching them as well, like often it'll go like 10 minutes before they remember to put the gold graph up, or the last hit or creep score graphs. Like it can be half the game before they go, oh, I suppose we should probably show some stats, and the casters do it because they want the information. But if the casters are casting from an observer, it often they forget to do it. It's like, it's nice information. Like it's qualitative versus quantitative. It's the old stat argument, but it's important. That's like the quantitative data is there for you to use, so why aren't we using it? And it's done so well overseas, and it's just not even on our radars. Perhaps we've got better things to focus on improving than that, but it's something we should definitely start looking at.
I'd agree. So if you guys want to see a Beetle, or at least hear a Beetle, he does the NAG podcast. Tell us about
spoiler
the NAG
alert.
podcast.
See you soon. Yeah, we're going to switching it to video at some point.
What?
Yeah.
I don't want to see you guys. I mean, this is
so we do a casual gaming podcast with a bit of esports news in it every week. It comes out on Friday mornings between 8 and 9, depending on what time I wake up. And yeah, that's snag.co.za or soundcloud.com/nag podcast. You can go. It's on iTunes and all those other podcatchers as well. That's a heavy focus on sort of like gaming news and releases that are coming up and what we think of games, and and then we've got Hellbird, who does our esports wrap up in every episode as well. So there's some value in. Yeah.
Well, something to mention for you now that you're moving to video. Have I lost you there?
You've gone still on my side.
Yeah, you've also gone still, but I can still hear you. So, okay, well, that's a fairly weird facial expression you got going there. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that aspect, but I'd probably a good time to wrap it up then. So thanks guys for watching. Just for a quick recap here, basically we've gone from Stone Age broadcast to almost international quality in a rapid period of time. There's room for improvement, and if any of you guys want to catch a Beetle who can possibly give you some information for your event, definitely have a chat to the guy, because he's a wealth of knowledge.
At Beetle001 on Twitter is the easiest way to get hold of me.
Cool. Well, thank you, Mr. Beetle. I will go with your weird sort of oil painting picture that is just stuck there. We'll go with that, and we'll fade out on that note. Any shout outs you want there?
No, I don't want to say any hello to anybody.
Good. Screw them all. X out.